Okay, so this very brief lesson on the conscience. I call it the human conscience because every human being was born with a conscience. It's a thing that is embedded within us at birth, so you can't help it. If you a human being and you came through the birth canal, you have a built-in conscience. And if we were to try to give a definition to conscience, we could call it, as many definitions, but one of the ways we could define the conscience is that thing that's inside of us that tells us right from wrong. It tells us good from bad. It's always, without fail, is always leading us towards that which is acceptable to God and leading us away from that which is not acceptable to God, leading us away from the bad and leading us towards the good, towards the right thing, right? It literally, like what a way to look at the conscience, it literally makes you your own judge, right? It's an inner feeling or a voice, very subtle, very gentle, but very powerful and very stern and very unmovable. Okay, it acts as a guide to the rightness or the wrongness of every thought and every behavior. We see that in some of the scriptures that we will take a look at. It's a moral witness within us. It is without any kind of encouragement or any kind of special favor. It automatically judges our actions and our thoughts without fail 100% of the time. And the conscience is also embedded with the knowledge of the truth. Now, there was a scripture. There's a lot of scriptures. I just recently found this out. There's 29 scriptures in the New Testament, base scriptures. And then there's approximately 40 total biblical references that either allude to or talk about or explain or touch on the human conscience. Now, one of those, because we couldn't possibly go into all of the scripture references, that'll be a 3 hour conversation. But one of the scriptures is found in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, starting around verse 7, I think, through verse 9, where Jesus is there in the temple. And so some of the religious folks, church people, something else, man. Church people bring a woman that they had caught fornicating or cheating on her husband, and they say, hey, look, we was eyewitnesses. We was tiptoeing, we was peeping, so we know this ain't something we talked about. We actually witnessed this happen, and the law says regarding this thing that we witnessed, ABC XYZ. They bring in this situation. Here's a case that they present to Jesus as if he were a lawyer, and they say, well, what you got to say about it, lawyer, judge, whatever. And then so Jesus, he ignores them for a little bit. And then so finally he lifts himself up and he says, okay, all right, almost like acknowledging, yeah, the law is true, because they told him, they say, well, the law said ABCXYZ, and you supposed to be a man of the law. And so as he begins to answer them and address the situation, he says to them, whichever one of you, so if it was 50 people standing there, he's like, whichever one of you has no sin, like you got zero sin in your life, right? In other words, you've never violated the law that you presented in this case, you go ahead and cast a stone at her. You first cast a stone at the woman. Now they looking stupid because something down inside of them told them that what we hear right now is true. I haven't kept the law. I am a violator of the law. And so they begin to dismiss themselves, right? Being, as the scripture says, I think it's verse 8, being convicted of their own conscience. So I'm saying all that to say this. Jesus Christ himself is the truth. The scripture calls him the truth, and that's what he is. Those of us that know him, we know he the truth. He the real deal. He is the truth, right? He's everything that truth is. He embodies truth, right? And so I'm saying that to say this because the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Another way of saying that, remember the scripture that say that we got to live by every word that proceedeth. Well, that word proceedeth is an action word. It's like he's a living God. He's not dead. You take the law, and not to discredit the law because the law was given by God, but the law is basically a formal letter. That's just like saying to us living now in 2021, that's just like saying to us that that when God speaks now, it takes precedence over everything, even that which has been spoken in times past, because he's a living God, and it's a living way. The way that this life that we're in, it's a new and it's a living way. It's constantly, it's like saying what he says now, will supersede that which has been written. And so their conscience bearing witness to the truth. Jesus is speaking to me now. Jesus is talking. I know what the letters say. I know what the law say, but Jesus is on the scene. Grace and truth comes by this man. And when he speak, it's going to supersede everything. And so I hope that it help us understand how the conscience work, because the conscience is the thing that caused them to dismiss themselves. The conscience is the thing that caused them to check themselves. The conscience is the thing that caused them to acknowledge the truth. The conscience is the thing that said that, you know what we hearing right now. I know what we read and learned and studied, but what we hearing right now, this present truth, the conscience is the knower that lets me know that what I'm hearing right now is absolute truth, and this is what I'm gonna go with, what I have to give into, or I have to submit to. If this made sense, I hope so. I'm not sure. I know it made sense in my mind, but we can't always articulate what we're thinking or what we understand, even for that fact. But I'm gonna end it right there, because again, talking about the human conscience, you can go on for days, man. The conscience is another scripture in Romans, I think it was, a Corinthians, that talked about the conscience is something that you don't even want to violate somebody else's conscience, or you don't want to weaken their conscience, or you don't want to injure their conscience. So God put a lot of stock in the conscience, and I think it's a very good study. I'm continuing to study and learn more about it, because I like I was saying to God, I really want to understand the conscience, because I don't think I do, because I think the conscience can be educated. I'm not 100% sure. I think it can be enlightened and changed, and one scripture said emboldened. So those are kind of things, but that is my little take on my little lesson on my brief lesson on the conscience. I hope you got some out of it.